to another episode of the Genesis Temple podcast. As usual, this is Damiano with my two guests. In this episode, we're gonna go over what is happening in the world of game localization, especially regarding the use of AI tools and what companies are gonna change over the next few years, and how translators are reacting to this change. What do they want and what do they wish for the future of game localization? So enjoy. So we're here with Beatrice and Chiara, who both work in the field of game localization. And since I'm a very lazy host, of course, I will let my two guests introduce themselves because I'm very lazy. So please, Beatrice, you go first.
Oh, thank you. So happy to start first. So my name is Beatrice Ceruti. I'm a video game translator. I translate from German and English into Italian. I've been doing this job for 7 years now, and I work with both agencies and direct clients. I'm also part of IGDA as like a volunteer. So it's the International Game Developers Association. I both try to help the interest group, the LocTig, dedicated to localization, and also like the IGDA Milan chapter in Italy. And I'm also like a member of an Italian translator association, which is called Tramiti. And that's it. So I try to do my best to help our colleagues and our community.
Chiara, your turn.
I don't know if...
Okay. I am Chiara di Modica, and I'm entering now my 8th year in the game localization. I translate from English to Italian. I could also translate from French, but it never happens because no games are ever available in French. Basically, only translate and no member of any association. So this is also why I invited Beatrice, because she is way more experienced than I am.
So let's start with since we're going to get in some topics that are going to be a little bit painful, I would guess. So let's start with something a little bit lighter. So let's break the ice with something a little bit nicer. What made you decide to get into localization and translation?
So I think that like many translators share the same story. So I did passion for languages, generally speaking. So when I was younger, I decided like to study languages at universities and then translation. After like finishing my translation studies, like I actually discovered the game localization because like no teacher and anybody had ever talked to me about game localization, and I applied for an internship in Germany. In a game localization agency. I stayed there around 6 months, and then coming back to Italy, I decided to try the freelancer way, we could say. And I've been doing that for like 7 years. I'm also entering my 8 years along with Chiara, actually. And I've been pretty happy. I'm not like a hardcore gamer. I would say that I was like a very, like the kind of typical 90 kids playing with Game Boy, PlayStation and such. So games are a big part of my background and something I really like to enjoy, mostly indie games right now. So it was just like two passions coming together. So languages on one side and games on the other. And I found this job that like puts everything together.
And in my case, I was just trying very hard to leave Italy because I was no longer feeling good in my country. And I started looking around for job proposals elsewhere. And I realized that there were people actually looking for not really translator, but just people comfortable with their mother tongue, and specifically Italian. And they were looking for quality assurance testers, localization testers for video games. So I applied in 2015, and I started my journey in Montreal in 2017, becoming a localization tester for video games. I was a gamer myself as well, mostly a PC gamer, point-and-click adventures gamer, and then everything else that came later, like cozy games and indie games as well. Then when I got back from Montreal, I realized that I was comfortable with my job. I wanted to follow the same path, and I started applying to a ton of other jobs proposals, and I ended up in Romania as well, working for Quantic Lab and then in Malaga for Localsoft, and then in parallel I also started my freelance activity, and this is how I ended up to be a translator as well, starting from tester career.
So personally, I don't come from a translation background. I did a few translation work on and off, not really on games, but several other things around art and architecture, but that was a while ago, but not really on a professional level, of course. What I often find interesting about the work of translating is trying to localize, to adapt an original work that might be full of cultural references to another culture that, of course, most often does not understand the references. So how do you adapt those? How do you modify those? Do you modify those or not? So my question to you would be, what's your biggest challenge in your daily work, and what do you find most interesting about it?
I would say that the most challenging part is trying to understand the source culture. I would say, yeah, okay, if I have to translate something from my culture, I know what the references are because it's my culture and I know what I'm talking about. I grew up in it. And this has happened the same for Vampire Survivor, for example. That's a game with plenty of pop cultural references from the 80s, from Rome underground music and scene in the 90s and years to 2000. And this is exactly the situation I was in. I had my team of translator, not mine, they were not hired by me, it was with the Lockheed QA. They were basically relying on me because I was explaining the puns and the references. And then, of course, there was also the developer coming in to help with the query log, where the translators can enter queries for the developers. But this is the easy part, when you come from your culture and you can explain it to others. But if you do not belong to a specific culture, and English culture, in Anglophone culture is so wide, and this is only when you get to translate American games or English-speaking games, but then there are games from any country. And this is where you really need to dig through hours of researches online to try to understand where does this reference come from, if it's niche, if it's specific to the culture, if it's specific from a specific time. And sometimes developers are not really responsive. Sometimes they forget that they're also working with us, collaborating with us to help us understand the nuances of their games. And this, I would say, is the most challenging part, because it's not just translating word by word, but it's really trying to understand something we didn't grow up in. That can be quite hard.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I agree with Chiara. I would like to add something that's not related to actually the art of translating. We would say, like, because she already told like what's very interesting and also very hard. It's like understanding the culture and then trying to bring it to another culture that is different. Actually, for me, it is also very difficult, like nowadays, to also talk to the people that like play games and make them understand that you don't have a one-to-one translation of things, because like people nowadays are becoming like more and more like they know English better than like in the past, we could say, but it's very hard to make them understand that, like, you know, the sentence, an English sentence, is not the same. It's like it's built differently from an Italian sentence. So when we want to bring the same feeling like a game has in the source language, in the original language, we have to change something, because like it's not about like having this exact same words, it's about having the same feeling when you are like playing the game. And for me that is very hard, because I get the feeling that like people are very nitpicky when it comes to translation just because they know a language, but sometimes they don't understand that like knowing a field is not the same as being a professional, such as like if I know math, I'm not a professional in math, so I cannot understand the kind of stuff like inside the work of a mathematician. Because languages, like we use them every day, obviously, it's even easier to like judge like what you have in front of you. So for me, like this is it's not related to the actual act of translating, but it's more about like you could say like the narrative around translation. But yeah, that's also what like makes enjoyable to like to to have this conversation also among us and then bring them to the people, like to make them understand also our point of view and see how they react and try to have a dialogue about it. So yeah.
I still remember in 2018 watching a streaming video from a Twitcher who was playing one of the games I translated, and he was explaining every single choice I made. And at some point, there was a pun that I had to recreate because it was just simply not working in English for keeping the same structure. And I recreated it, and the guy was very disappointed and said something like, yeah, no, this is not really translated because the English said something else. Yeah, that's the purpose of my job. Thank you for appreciating it.
Yeah.
Chiara nailed it with that story, because yes, that's what happens with translation. You're creating, basically in adapting, you're creating a bridge between two cultures, and it's often you're just working alone in your case, or maybe of course you're talking with the developers if they answer, and collaborating with someone else, sure, but most of the time you're doing it alone. I mean, especially when you see credits, for games, you just see one Italian translator, maybe two if you're lucky, but yeah, that's mostly it. So you're basically just creating, but of course that's also worked with other languages as well. It's not just Italian. Yeah, you're really creating a bridge between two cultures and two languages. So it's really, really difficult. I mean, people often don't recognize how difficult it is unless like they're put in front of the problem and say, okay, now do this. Now translate this. Now adapt a Fantozzi in French. Good luck with that. Fun to see. But yeah, for example, recently, speaking of interesting adapting choices, I replayed the original Ace Attorney trilogy, which is overall good translation, but it's the fact it's very, very product of its time when it was released. So I think the translation was done in 2008, 9, 10, around that time. And yes, you really see that because at one point there's a direct reference to the Harlem Shake, which,
Okay.
I don't know if you remember the meme, the Harlem Shake, but yeah, it's one of the early memes from the internet. Yeah, you see today the Harlem Shake and you're like, okay, yes, I guess the original Japanese referenced something similar, so they try to adapt it, but it's so specific to that era, which you're like, that's an interesting choice. It's definitely a choice. I mean, you can say it's a bad choice, it's a good choice, but yeah, it's definitely a choice that product of this time for sure. Yeah, speaking of this, what would you call this is an interesting question actually. What would you call a good adaptation? What makes a good adaptation? Because of course it's not simply being faithful to the source, because that's not what makes a good adaptation. So it's definitely a little bit more complex than that.
Recently, I had to proofread a colleague of mine on a new game I cannot speak about, but I was actually almost moved to tears by his translation because of how he managed to escape from the English source in a manner that made it incredibly realistic. It was mainly about dialogues from mafia characters, and he truly adapted those dialogues. He wasn't just keeping sort of the same vibe, he rearranged it so that it made it in something that could come from a movie. I don't know. It was really, really credible. And although it was quite far from the original in some sentences, of course, not all of it. He didn't recreate all of it, but I couldn't really correct anything, because even if it was not that true to the source, it was just very, very good. I was reading a book. I was listening to a movie inside my head, and this for me is a really, really good adaptation. It doesn't need to keep exactly the same words or the same sense of the sentence in English.
I think like the as I was saying before, like when you manage to get the same feeling for like from the original to the new culture, like you bring it and it's actually the same feeling. I think you're winning. It's very hard also not to like to create a translation that doesn't age. That I agree, because language changes. So at some point, some kind of like, exclamations, some kind of expletives are gonna be like are gonna feel old. When you like play a game and you truly like play it, and except from the cultural references that maybe have to be kept, because like the setting it is what it is. Like you see maybe, I don't know, an English like setting. When I say English, I mean an American setting, American city, this kind of stuff. But when people actually talk and you think they could be like people I come across in the streets, or also like, I mean, when it feels very natural and very real to us, I think that's the best localization. And sometimes that means also getting far from the source and not like being a traitors, but like actually finding, oh, this sounds like that to an English speaking person. So in Italian, we should change the structure, maybe also the reference and stuff, because in our culture, we don't make a reference to this kind of concept and we stay away from that. We just bring what feels natural to us. As an example, when we were translating like Wukong, Black Myth Wukong. So when we were like translating poetry, it's obvious that you just choose like 2 or 3 words, a concept that are very important, and you bring them. But obviously the choices then changes. So each poem could be different depending on the person that translated it. I get the feeling that when people either read it and don't think it was written in English, and also read it and realize it's very good, that's when you found a good spot for translation.
Yeah, which brings us to the point that if you wanna do your job as a translator and adapt the work and do it well, you don't simply have to know how to translate words, which is something that Google Translate can do for you. So if you if you just want that, there are simple tools even before AI that did it decently.
Yeah.
If you want something that is not just simply translated, so it's a one-to-one translation, but it's actually adapted, then you need someone that knows the culture. And it also, as you mentioned, is someone that has quite a good amount of creativity and is someone that is good and maybe knows a little bit of their stuff, rather, so that it's not simply someone that is there to translate something, but also understands where this reference comes from, where this event comes from, whatever, and they can adapt it to something that makes sense in the final language, so to speak. Speaking of creativity, of course, we come to the topic of our discussion, which of course is what is happening in the world of localization with AI. So of course, this is a topic that I don't know anything about, so of course I will leave the floor to you. So there are some obvious consequences, when one thinks about localization AI, so what happens. But yeah, let's get into more details. So let's hear from you. What's the connection? What's the relationship between those two things which should not go together?
In the localization industry, like machine translation has been like implemented since long ago. Like it's been there for years. So now they're just like they put together also like AI, just because like it improves the capabilities, we could say, of machine translation. So what we're seeing actually, it's not something entirely new. It's just like an evolution of a process that already started. The most like important thing that I would like, I as Beatrice would like to say is that like the main issue in a field that is very creative about like the game localization is the ethics behind the AI tools and also machine translation, like because we're always seeing like people saying that it improves quality, it will help the translators, it will help like anybody, this kind of like technology. At the same time, when you read studies about the impact of working with machine translation and AI translated like text, or also when you read about the working conditions of translators that work with this kind of tools, usually they're very bad actually. So the main issue for us is not that like we don't want new technology to like move forward, because we also use a lot of very technological tools, I would say, like, the cat tools, like we used to be very tech savvy. It's more about like the fact that they are trying to, develop tools that will just make everything faster, cost less, make more margin, and then like leave creativity and leave like the translators just to review this machine to make it like good enough for the people that are paying for the translation. So they're taking out the creative step. And there was never actually a dialogue about what do translators want? How can we improve these technologies taking into account the translators' feedback? Me personally, I'm against this kind of like technology right now, because it was built without ethics standard. It was like built scraping like copyright, protected text, and also like if we think about the actual impact on our like on the world, like the water resources, like the electricity resources. I mean, I get the feeling that it's just like developing another tool to make some people very rich again. And it's not like in our field, it's not used to like there's not a real purpose except this one. If I review a text translated from a machine, it's going to take a lot more time, because it has so many flaws compared to a very good translation, like to a text translated from a very good translator. So there's actually no point for us to work with this kind of technology. But people from the outside just see us kind of like luddites people that are still like writing on the paper with a pen or maybe a quill with the ink and throw stones against technology. So yeah, I would say that the main issue is like the exploitation of workers behind this technology that seem all like so beautiful and so smart and stuff like that from the outside, but the reality behind the scenes is very bad actually.
But what bothers me the most is big lie that they're selling us and selling to the public. That would be we're creating this magical tool to help translators, but we never asked for it, and it's not helping us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have so many colleagues already abandoning the field because of this, because they cannot reach the end of the month and paying their bills. This is not helping us because it's not a tool in our hands. It's a tool in the hands of the companies that manage the localization and that are in between the developer studios and the translators. So basically, it's the company that hires the translators who imposes this tool in order to cut the prices. Sometimes I think that they are also receiving a full price from the developers and then just slipping in the machine translation and then providing only human proofreading so that the company can actually cut the price. It's not helping us also because we are working more to fix the horrible quality that reaches us. I mean, I'm not talking for myself because I have never done machine translation post-editing, but I've heard plenty of stories from my colleagues who are doing so. You are basically working more and to reach a decent quality, just to make it more fluent, just to make it more credible. And we are not paid enough to do so. And this is the big lie that bothers me. All the rest is related to what we discussed just before. All the work related to doing researches online to understand the native culture, all the researches to understand what meme can be introduced to have the Italian audience laughing, all those strategies to recreate a feeling that can provide the same satisfaction in the final player. All these processes are just lost. So either the machine translation just ignores all of it and translate one-to-one, even the puns and the references and the wordplays, or it is up to the reviewer, the proofreader, to recreate all these parts, but being paid less. Paid less means it needs to work more hours per day, and it means that it won't have enough time to dedicate enough resources and thinking to each of these puns that needs to be refixed. Some people are just not even bothered by the loss of quality, and some developers are just intrigued by the fact that they can make their video games available to more people and more languages, so they just do not care. Luckily, these are the developers developing games that are not rich in narrative, so to them it's okay just to have UI translated so that the gamers can understand what's happening in the game. And luckily enough, we still have developers that are quality oriented and that do care about the narrative of their games, and then they really need to have a human adaptation.
That's what we're seeing is that companies think that they should put basically AI anywhere, and that would allow somehow a much better use of everyone's time, because they can save time by using these wonderful tools, and of course saving money everywhere, because obviously once you can make, in your case, more translation in much less time, that means more games translated for whatever language under the sun. So that means that we can unlock new markets that were previously unknown, like, I don't know, Antarctica, or I don't know, whatever.
So penguins populated islands.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Penguin. That's an audience that we haven't exploited yet. So we're ready for the penguins.
We will reach that point.
Penguin games. So yeah. I mean, it's obvious that everyone's thinking the same thing when it comes to AI tools. Not even translation, but mostly everywhere in game developing. But yeah, really most activities under the sun. Of course, yes. On one side, there's the companies that want to save money and blah blah blah. But on the other side, there's this problem with the audience and the attention that they're putting into the content that they're consuming. So in this case, we're talking about games, but we could easily extend that kind of thing to other things, like, I don't know, reading an article or watching a TikTok video or anything, And it's something that I've noticed, that people put very, very, very little attention into what of course, it's all, wow, Damiano has come to this great realization, and no one has ever realized this before. Woo, wow, I'm glad I listened to this podcast. But yeah, the fact is that I'm still surprised every day by how little attention people are putting into things. Like, the attention span is not even like, people like, I write a lot, and people used to say, oh, nobody reads more than 8 lines or 8 words, whatever. And I found that in videos too. It's like in TikTok videos, people don't even watch like beyond 3 seconds before commenting, even though it's something that's addressed in the video. It's like, oh yes, I go into this like in the first 30 seconds of this 1-minute video, and still people like comment before the first 5 seconds that, oh no, of course you're wrong, but no, that's exactly what I say in the video. I'm not wrong. That's my point. You didn't even watch 30 seconds. I do think that hopefully there's still an audience that pays attention in games, that can appreciate localization that's done with attention and care and love, perhaps. I don't know. Hopefully. But I mean, it's I don't know if it's something that you've noticed. I mean, you've been working for 8 years, both of you. So I don't know if it's something that you've noticed that it's been changing. The fact that people pay more attention or less attention, or maybe the same attention. I don't know. Maybe that you haven't noticed any change in this. But yeah, what do you think about this? Do you see that kind of appreciation from the audience to a good product, or is that something that's been kind of lost in time? I don't know.
How could I say? Like, there's a general tendency of people having a shorter and shorter attention span. So that's like what's happening right now. And also the fact that usually also like the language skills are getting worse and worse, because people read less, people enjoy more and more content in another language. So they lose their skills in their native language. So that's why we see a lot of like people that are like, don't talk pretty well, or don't know like words that could be a little more, how could I say, like higher register words. It's normal for a language to become more and more simple over the time. So we know that these are kind of like tendencies that are happening all around the world. So this obviously impacts like the people. At the same time, I get the feeling that gamers are very picky. Like they really care about the games. So it's very weird because we are having two sides of the same coin. Like we have game localization on one side. We have these tendencies that are against, we could say, proper mastery of a language and stuff like that. On the other side, we see many people truly nitpicking like like localization choices. If you take a person that doesn't read many books, obviously they have like a specific level and their expectations are also lower. But when you go to good readers, like readers that read a lot of books, obviously their expectations are very high. So I get the feeling that for also people that the gamers, like the gamers, it's not like there's a true or a good or a bad gamers, but people that enjoy many different games, that enjoy narrative games. So that kind of people that truly care about how the game was written. So they're obviously very picky. So when they see and when they read a badly written language, I know people just switch to English. They're just like, I don't want to have these issues, and they just switch to English. I mean, this also comes from what we said about game developers. Game developers often treat a translation as something that comes later, and it's not as important as writing the game. But what they're actually delivering to an audience is a newly written game in another language. So they should have the same care they have for the English script, for the Italian script too, and the French script and German script. So I think that's a big issue. That's the reason why many people maybe don't buy games in Italian, in like they don't play in Italian anymore and stuff like that, because all the choices made for profit obviously impact the quality of game localization. So yeah, it's a bit of a hard situation because I see people, as you said, like being less and less interested or less like attentive to detail. But at the same time, there are many gamers that truly care if a game is well translated, if they notice a typo. I think like probably game localization is like a field that works in a very peculiar way, we could say, yeah.
Probably today we have a huge variety of games that we didn't have before. And so a gamer is not forced to play those 4 or 5 games as 20 years ago, but they can actually choose the genre that they prefer. And so someone who is not interested in a story-driven game, they can choose whatever they prefer. And the fact that bothers me sometimes, and it's a common joke in our domain when translating a brawler or very violent or action game with tons of text and tons of dialogues and stuff all over, and we wonder, is any gamer actually going to read this when they just want to go and shoot and kick asses? They will probably just skip any dialogue, and so there's this bittersweet feeling of being paid for, I don't know, 40,000 words, which is very good for the month, but then knowing that probably no one is going to read those. And this is one thing that probably impacts the way we play video games today. And another issue, for example, and I think it is directly related to the average quantity of readers in our country, for example. We know that Italy is not among the best country for readers. So we read less and less books. This can be directly seen in the type of video games that are supported and played in Italy. Because, for example, the point and click adventure games, which were a huge part of my youth, they are less and less played in Italy. And this can be directly seen in the languages that are chosen for the games to be translated in. For example, there are less and less point-and-click adventure translated in Italian on Steam. So I believe that there is a trend in Italy that's going down the hill as far as reading is regarded. But I do not know if this is related to the shorter attention span caused by new social medias.
Well, I would say it's also probably a global trend. Of course, I mean, we're talking about what we are, close to, but yes, I would say it's probably a global trend that, I mean, of course, there are visual novels that are fairly successful. I mean, we got, for example, Slay the Princess, that was a fairly recent one. Of
Yeah,
course, that was a
I work on
100%.
it.
Okay, nice. Okay. That was 100% a visual novel, and it was, I would say, more than fairly successful. But again, it's probably one of the few exceptions. I wouldn't say overall people love to read in games. I wouldn't say it's probably a global trend on that front, which is reminds me of something that I was talking today about. There are some very important like text adventure games made in the early 80s, and they're very, very like political and heavy and in text and in topics and everything. So it's like, how do you recommend someone that's like, I don't know, 20, 25, kind of a younger gamer today to go back and play an early 80s text adventure? So we're talking about text adventure, full stop, only text adventure from the early 80s about ergonomics. That's of course many people, I'm exaggerating, some people will find it interesting, but probably not a lot of people outside of the under 40, let's say under 40. Then of course this also goes back to what we were talking about. Again, the problem with AI tools is that obviously, I mean, Beatrice mentioned the whole copyright thing, which is another kettle of fish that we're not gonna dive into because it's gonna take forever. But of course, the main problem with AI tools, of course, is that they sound like they're human. That's the thing. They pretend they're good. They make a good like pretending to be human thing, but we know that they aren't. But the problem is that we know, because I mean we are not fans. Obviously, we talk about us on this podcast for fans of AI tools in general. Probably. I mean, of course, we use them when they make sense, but not anymore than that. But a lot of people forget that they're not dealing with something that it's a human. It's not something that's pretending to be human. It's just like a learning machine that has just compiled data from around the web, put it all together, and tries to respond, tries to please the master, so to speak, tries to appease the user, which is another great problem with AI, of course, which is why I would say that in localization, that's a huge limit, and that AI is probably never gonna make any choice that we could call interesting. Even putting aside the creative bit, let's put it aside. Let's pretend that AI is very creative for a second, if we can do that. Would AI make like a very out there choice, a very daring choice, a very bold choice into localization, to trying to propose something that it's unique and out there? Like for example, I mentioned the Italian memes in Like a Dragon. Could AI ever do something like that? Probably not ever. So again, if you're just limiting yourself to using those kind of tools into translating and localizing, you're missing on a whole part of what makes localization interesting. That's the thing. You're probably translating a game using AI. Sure, I mean we can argue that it's probably translating a game, but that's all you're doing. You're translating a game. You're not localizing it. You're not adapting it to anyone really in particular, because you're missing out on someone that makes the choice interesting choices. And you also mentioned about reviewing a text that's been translating by AI. I do sometimes do some localization work for some TV series and stuff. And we do usually start from a text that's been translated by kind of, it's not an AI, but like machine tool. Of course, that saves some time, but again, it's all in the editing. It's often more work trying to edit all the weird stuff that the machine tool has put in, rather than just translating from zero that one would have done like in the 90s or in the 80s. What would you say is the sweet spot that we hopefully we could reach in the future about using AI? Because we mentioned that they can be useful tools, of course, if used correctly. So what would you say, what would you recommend to companies that are trying to push this? Of course, do not push them. Yes, obviously, do not push the AI tools down our throats, obviously. But what would be the sweet spot? What would be the balance, would you say? What would you recommend?
EULA. and all those user agreement contracts and all those horrible things that we sometimes have to endure. Those are really, really the type of text where you do not need to be creative. Yeah, you get paid anyway, but I would rather, I don't know, start cleaning toilets. Sorry, or respect for who does this, but if I had to choose between a EULA contract and cleaning toilets, I would probably choose the second. And some games, for example, they have endless database of technical descriptions of weapons, but the type of technical description you could find in an online shop, an online site for buying rifles and guns, and all those stuff too do not need any creativity at all. And so that would actually probably save our time, and that would require probably very little proofreading because let's be serious. Orthographically and grammarly speaking, the quality is quite good. So if you know that already, you don't have to check accents or apostrophes or typos and minor details. That's already very convenient. And if you have a description of 40 lines of a gun, and you know that's basically very little possibility of mistakes, that's all time that we save.
So basically, leave the boring jobs to AI, which was the original
Yes,
promise, if you remember
yes,
that.
exactly. That was
But
the
nothing
starting
to
goal.
be happening. But yeah,
Exactly. One thing that can never be done on that side is, for example, discussing with colleagues. Because I remember with Bear, with one of our favorite projects, I remember spending like hours on a single sentence or on the single choice of a name, discussing the possible implication of choosing one over another. You rely on other colleagues to understand what's better for your game. You discuss for hours with your partners. Same for the queries that you can ask to the developers. Sometimes you need to have their confirmation, like, would you prefer us to choose this politeness level with the character or the other, or would you prefer us to keep this in English because it's vital for your plot? All those kind of questions that we daily ask to the developers, those would never be asked by an AI who works independently and will never be able to do this kind of choice, this kind of level of respect to the original work.
but we could make the AIs fight themselves, though, which could be interesting.
Oh, I would want to.
It's like Robot Wars,
Yeah.
the AI version.
I grabbed the popcorns.
Yeah, I think that also Chiara pointed out something very interesting and that people always forget. It's like that the best translation usually is created when people also discuss, because like usually two minds are better than one. So many times people like just see a translation and they think that like someone typed in like the text in Italian and that's it. But many times we take inspiration from other people and also from like the person we have in front of us. So a very good like translation choice is born after discussing a lot and going back and forth between different options. As if I have to reply to your question, actually, so as of now, I really think that like when it comes to translation, AI is not benefiting like anybody. So for me, maybe the first step would be actually give the translation the power to understand how it could help us. Like that's the first step, because as I told you before, like we've never been part of the dialogue around AI and its use when it comes to game localization. So I think also like this I don't know, makes me think when could it be like useful? Because sometimes people say, oh, I use it maybe to have synonyms. And I'm like, yeah, but we have like huge synonym dictionaries. So what's the point? It's the same. You just type a word and you have many choices. So that's not even a usage. So that's why each time I try to find an actual usage for translation, like the act of translating, we already have all the tools, like the dictionaries, the internet to find stuff, and our skills to do the actual stuff. So for now, for our field, I truly don't find a user. So yeah, for me, it's kind of like interesting because people always say, "Oh, the possibilities and the everything they could offer," and then I'm left with, if I think about the actual act of translation, there's not much we need. It's like our knowledge, our skills, some tools that help us, which are dictionaries actually. We don't need much more, to be honest. Like but maybe with a dialogue about it, like of translators and like the people actually developing the tool, maybe we could reach like a perfect, like, a good spot. So, but for now, I know I have many doubts. I have many open questions. So I will see just how it goes. But I don't think anybody will have a dialogue with a translator. I think they're just gonna go their way, exploiting the text, gaining money, and that's it.
For example, Beatrice was talking about synonyms, and it's true we have a good database for synonyms, but let's assume that we have to create poetries and rhymes, and at that point you need like as many words as possible related to a specific topic, because you need to find the right word that fits the right rhyme. With artificial intelligence, you can ask a long list of words related to the topic, and then you can go and choose the one that adapts to your text. That is actually something that I found useful and that saved me time.
But you see, like discussing with among us, just
I know,
about a very interesting usage. Like,
I'm happy that this podcast provided with a good example of how to use AI for Beatrice. So and then now she can go home. I mean, she's already home, but yeah, she can bring back the one good use.
Thank you. I will be like, guys, I really like AI now.
Exactly. Change your mind immediately. Like, 180.
No, I'm pro AI.
But yeah, I mean, this brings me to the fact that it's really strange for me. I mean, I've never developed a game, obviously, but I've done creative stuff, obviously, and it's strange that clients seem to be so, I'm not speaking about all clients, but some clients seem to be so, like reluctant to be trustworthy of translators. So it's like, oh yes, we're going to give you a text that has already kind of been half machine translated, or we already ran this through AI, so you just have to proofread it so we can save money and time, whatever. I would say no. I mean, I would say trust your translator. That's the thing. I mean, if you want to hire someone to do their job, make them do their job. Do not like half-ass it and then bring them something that's kind of half-baked so they can just proofread it and whatever. Because not only makes the work longer, as we mentioned sometimes, but the other problem is that often the clients themselves, and now I'm talking about someone that unfortunately plays a lot of games, the clients do not even have an idea of what they're working with. I mean, and I'm referring to the fact that I've played some games where they're just in English. So we're not talking about something that's mistranslated. But obviously the developers are not native speakers, and it clearly shows. Now, of course, I'm not making a big deal out of typos or whatever, grammar mistakes. I mean, they're not a huge deal. I mean, I would say if you can avoid it, but okay, they're not a huge deal. But I'm referring mostly to the fact that there are some games that they go so far beyond that you don't even understand anymore what's even happening in some scenes. The character's name change. They don't know how to use the third person, so sometimes it's he, other times it's they, she, who's talking, what's happening. That becomes a problem. So it's not anymore about the mistakes, typos, whatever. So it's like I don't understand what's going on. And the thing is that we're talking about small games, right? We're not talking about AAA games. So this is a vision of someone that probably says their first game or maybe their second game. So they're kind of young. So, you can understand that blah, blah, blah. Okay, they're young. They make mistakes. Everyone has made mistakes. It's your creature. It's your creation. Sorry. It's your child. I mean, I would try my best, even not myself as obviously an English native speaker, but I would try my best to make the script as good as possible. At least make someone read it. I mean, someone that speaks English. I'll get a friend to read it. I don't know. You don't have money for an editor. Okay, get a friend. I don't know. Find someone online. I mean, I would try my best to make the script that I've been working for so many months and maybe years as my first game to be as comprehensible as possible. That would suffer not. So that's why it's amazing that then those kind of people, those kind of clients are so untrustworthy of their translators. They're like, oh no, let's save money, and they're like, I mean, what are you saving money on? I mean, there's some things that probably not worthy saving money on. And I would say localization is probably not one of those. I mean, if you don't want to localize your game, that's fine. That's a choice. That's fine. That's your choice. But if you want to localize it, trust your translators, I would say.
So as I told you at the beginning of our chat, I work as a volunteer also for IGDA for the Milan chapter. And so we organized, and I also went to other events outside of IGDA with a lot of indie developers. And this I say without judging anyone, because languages is my job. So I just want people to have my same attitude when I see jobs or when I see skills I don't have. I truly respect what the people that work those jobs say to me. So because I understand how ignorant I am about something. So I can't even list the amount of times I said to developers, please make someone read your game. And also when you take into account the amount of money that goes into developing compared to the amount of money that goes into a single English proofreading, the proofreading would be probably 1% of the money of development. So
yes.
We're not even talking about big money. So you don't know how many times I played a game in English and I found so many mistakes. And sometimes it was not even sometimes were actually proper grammar mistakes, very bad grammar mistakes. Every time I was very kindly saying, having this kind of mistakes really ruins the experience to people. And if you just want to start properly, make it read, make someone read it, or pay a proofreader, an actual English speaker to correct it. And each time they were like, no, but I work in English every day. I write emails in English. I've been speaking English. And I'm like, it was like a rule. The universe was speaking to me, and the next sentence had a mistake. I was like, how is it possible that every time they tell me they work in English every day, the next sentence has a mistake? What you said resonates so much with me, because you have truly to go to professional to do stuff. And the first step is having a great English text, because you cater to the first big part of the audience, and you make everything also easier for the localization, because the better the text is from the original, the less issues the translation and localization staff has. So, but yeah, I think that we're very used to working and using English, but people don't understand what it means to write as a native English speaker and write as someone who knows English very well, or knows English, because there are very different levels.
Beatrice, I'm very glad that you don't get to work with my Chinese client who translates all of their scripts from Chinese directly in English via machine translation. Because in that case, you would be very, very unhappy, because we have character names changing from one line to the other simply because they are transliterated in different ways. And we have no coherence at all, no consistency. So, Damiano, when you say trust your translator, what can you say to such a client that those are people creating video games to make money? Those are awful games for bored people who play while they're in the toilet. The creators don't really aren't even proud of what they're writing. So who cares? They just give it to a shitty AI, and then whatever happens, happens. At this point, I don't even understand why they bother paying translators from English to other languages when they already trust an artificial intelligence to translate from Chinese to English. But when you said trust your translators, that's actually a good point, because, for example, when you give your English text to 12 different translators in other languages, you are having a second round of proofreading, because sometimes it is the final translator who finds out mistakes in the source, even sources that have been previously proofread, and that's very convenient, and it's something that probably AI doesn't do, or not yet.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's the problem is that I mean, of course, you mentioned that shitty games that not even people that worked on them that really want to talk about them or be proud of them. So obviously,
Yep.
in those kind of cases, we're not talking about anyone that cares about the beautiful descriptions of text or story that they create. It's just there as basically a placeholder. So yeah, in other cases, it's very hard for me to explain why would you not even again go to a round of proofreading or something. Which again, Beatrice, you mentioned that the cost is very small, but even if you get just maybe like a friend, someone to probably give it a light proofreading, a light editing, at least to check if things kind of make sense in your story, which would already be enough. Would already be something. Yeah, what's small and indie developers. It's like I mean, I would expect them to care, not a lot, but to care at least about what they created. And sometimes it's so strange to see that that's not happening. Also, very quick question since I'm on the topic. Overall, do you prefer working with smaller developers or bigger developers overall, or if there's any difference?
I really love small developers. They're usually more caring about their game. They're usually more available. They take the time to properly reply to questions. When working with AAA, it's usually a nightmare. You have to wait for weeks for having just a developer replying to your questions. Sometimes it's not the right person who wrote those part of the game who replies, and you are left with more doubts than before. And sometimes it can happen that you're not the only one working on that game, so more batches are assigned to more translators, so you don't have the whole visibility on the project, and that can easily turn into a mess of lost consistency.
Yeah, I would say that I also prefer indie games for all the reasons Chiara said. And sometimes though, when the client is very good, actually, working on medium size or big games, I really like it because I got some very good experiences from clients that prepared everything perfectly. So everything went smooth, even when the project was huge. But that's very hard to come across. Even though indie developers sometimes are less prepared because they don't know how the translation process goes. So sometimes they miss giving reference files and stuff like that. But you appreciate because they try to improve. So but I think that indie games and little translation teams are the best. But I really like also when the good clients of mid-sized, big-sized game make you give you the opportunity to work in a good environment, because then you have also a big setting, an interesting game. I'm talking as an example about a lot of Giga projects I worked on. The client was perfect, was amazing. They gave everything. So I will never complain about those projects. But if I think about other big ones, I'm like, ew, that was such a bad experience. And the indies are more colorful, I would say, more interesting and unique. So that's the part we like. So
I want to take the opportunity for a very, very quick anecdote, which that I just got reminded. So we're talking about a time when Ubisoft wasn't such the huge monstrosity that is today, and they were working on Assassin's Creed 2. So, of course, that takes place in Italy, as we know, and with Ezio. And one person that worked on, not really the translation, but that was working with the team on some Italian details and stuff, told me that the original version of the Vatican guards in Assassin's Creed 2, they spoke in Italian, but they were saying a lot of blasphemies, actually. So you were like, stop! God. And so he was like, guys, where did you pick up those words? And they said, oh, we went to Italy. We heard a lot of that in Rome. And he was like, okay,
from the Vatican guards too.
Probably not the Vatican guards. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, do not make the Vatican guards say blasphemies in Italian, because that's not gonna go well. Not even in English. Even if you dub them in Italian, which obviously they dubbed it, but even the original English release would have some problems. Some people turning their heads and saying, wait, what did you say? So yeah, that was an interesting anecdote. Okay.
Such a pity.
I know. Would have been the great uncensored version.
Yeah. I can say that actually sometimes we get non-final parts of the game, and sometimes there are placeholder text and audio. And it happened to me while working on such a game, not the same chapter, but we actually had some videos from the game in a non-released version that had Italian dubbing with nonsensical dialogues or people in the dubbing room having just fun because they needed to put some placeholder, and we would get those references and listen to the audio and just rolling on the floor laughing because it's absolutely hilarious. So yeah, I can picture keeping blasphemical sentences and dialogues in such a game. That would be very, very cool.
Again, something that AI could never replicate again. So
Obviously.
Yeah.
going back full circle. So we talked about localization is fine. They don't need AI. We don't. You don't need AI. The business works well as it is right now, except for AI, which obviously, at least not in its current state. You don't need. What would you say would the improvements that you could see going forward? So in the future of localization, what would you see as what do you think is gonna happen in the next few years?
I don't know. Actually, I think we already talked like among us, like colleagues. We are seeing actually to a bit of kind of two ways. So a lot of people relying on AI because they don't care about quality, but a lot of people going kind of not back to the roots because those are not the roots. We're still here, but like say like relying on human translation because like AI has impacted so many jobs. People are kind of understanding what it means to also rely on AI for translation and for languages. So I actually see like the very big, like the behemoths going straight to AI, but I also see a lot of like little, medium, and also almost big size developers kind of like going back to like human translation 100%. Listening also to the voices of our community because we've been very vocal over the last years. So I really hope that we can also that our message can reach outside the bubble actually, so our little bubble. So, but yeah, I'm kind of hopeful because I see like when it comes to like little mid-sized and also like a little bit on the upper like almost big size developers, I'm kind of hopeful. Like I see some hope. So. Yeah, I don't know about Chiara, but
I'm usually not very positive or optimistic. So I would dream of a personal AI powered by my intelligence and rooted into my specific software that I use. The learning machine would learn from what I translated in 8 years of career. Whatever gets prompted automatically would have probably my style, and it would require very minor adjustments. What we will see is probably just a few lucky or more determined translator keeping working with smaller clients who care about their products, with smaller boutique agencies that craft tailored made translations for their clients. There will be not enough place for all of us translators, and probably only the more stoic ones will keep working in the industry. That's my point of view. Unfortunately, is a bit of a nightmarish point of view, and I myself, I do not know if I will be here in the future. I mean, so far I have been extremely lucky, or if it's not luck, it's probably being the right person in the right place, and I managed to jump in some very nice project and collectives of cool people that value this kind of art. I cannot be sure that we will be here, even just because the Italian is less and less required. So who knows?
But it is interesting about thinking about the AI version of Chiara as a translator. Like having each one of us will have its own their own machine learning tool. So basically, we will all upload our digital conscience to a kind of this huge a huge like collective brain of artificial intelligence where each of us has their own like little thing that you can open and then like converse or interact with Chiara, so you can see, you know, Chiara as a person, or Chiara working as a translator, Beatrice working as a translator, and me doing my podcast. So yeah, I definitely can see us in the future, like I don't know, maybe 60 years. We don't even need to go like 300 years. Probably 60 years is enough. Like we will have our own digital version of this podcast with everyone has their own AIs, and then we will argue against, well, what is a better AI, guys? What is the better? What's the best? What's the best? Yes. No, but yeah, the old school days. You remember those? Yes, AIs that pretend that they remember, you know, the old days when people were translating games on Microsoft Excel and stuff. Yeah. I can definitely see that happening, so that's very reassuring, you know. Speaking about the optimistic view of Chiara.
At the point, we will only have a AI audience, so no point in creating the contents when no one is going to listen to. So.
Perfect. Robots
At the
listening
point, we
to
won't
robots.
need to work. I hope capitalism just, I don't know, stops. I mean, if I don't have to work because AI does the work for me, I'm okay. I can just like go back to Roman times and enjoy my otium and just like be happy. Like it's okay.
You can continue your useless organic existence while AI does all the complicated job as Beatrice or Chiara or Damiano. They do the complicated stuff.
Yeah.
You can just eat grapes.
If you think about it seriously, for example, of concrete uses that AI can do for us, can be useful for. Imagine how many times you translated the same sentence over and over again in all your games because, I don't know, like collect all the diamonds in the room. I think we translated similar strings like hundreds and hundreds of times. Imagine if you had your own machine learning system in your MOQ program, that would save you a ton of time. So we have the technology. Why can't we have something similar that allows us to be more performative? Is that even a word? Oh, sorry. I mean, we could have something like that, but we just don't. So.
You heard it here first. Chiara is embracing the artificial intelligence takeover, basically. So you're just
for my own use to save myself.
You want humans to disappear and then artificial intelligence to take over. So yeah, we're going Terminator 2, Terminator 3, basically now.
It's not what I want. It's what will happen.
Always say thank you to AI when you. So
be polite.
Please and thank you, AI. Thank you.
Yeah.